And
Yeah.
yeah, so we'll go through and hear about the artifacts, hear about the experiences of it's your dad mainly and your aunt.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then, so if you have questions, wait until the end, or maybe jot them down on your notes so that you can remember to ask. Right, ready? Let's give a warm welcome to Mr. McSherry.
Thank you, everyone. If there's any questions that we can't get to because of time or whatever, I'll be back in at 2:45 today to pick up a few things, and I'd be happy to try and answer any that you have. It's a pleasure to be here again, too. I have to say this. This morning I'd like to talk about the items from World War II that my family have donated to the Madison Historical Resource Center, and about the war in general. How should we look at the world wars? Is it more informative to view them as two distinct conflicts, or as one enormous 10-year struggle with a 21-year armistice in the middle? There's a difference of opinion among historians about this. Some argue that the seeds for World War II were planted in the last few months of World War I and at the Treaty of Versailles. Since Germany was not invaded and occupied, the German population never felt the full weight of military defeat. In following years, this made it possible for Hitler and the National Socialists to argue that Germany's army had been on the brink of victory when they were stabbed in the back by domestic traitors. The eventual peace treaty imposed huge war reparations on Germany, stripped her of her overseas empire, and humiliated her. Such humiliation eventually turned to anger and a thirst for revenge. It's also true that the same nations fought in both wars. Other historians argue and emphasize the differing natures of the two wars. The First World War was an example, I think, a tragic example, of events outstripping the abilities of leaders to control and direct them. The world sort of stumbled and blundered into war. The second was the result of cold premeditation. And while the same nations fought, two nations switched sides, Japan and Italy. Additionally, the roles of France and Russia were dramatically different. There were two French governments. The Free French under de Gaulle fought with the Allies. The Vichy regime was supposedly neutral, but it certainly accommodated Nazi rule. In the First World War, Tsarist Russia was the weakest and least dependable member of the Triple Entente. In the Second World War, the USSR was the decisive factor in victory. It was the Red Army that ripped the heart out of the German war machine. I find this calendar, 1937, really interesting and kind of poignant. The cover depicts Father Time presenting the world to the new year, 1937, an infant. And the baby looks really concerned. The flames of war rage in Africa and Asia, probably in reference to Italy's invasion of Ethiopia and Japan's invasion of China. The threat of world war was clearly in the air years before Germany invaded Poland in 1939. What all historians do agree on is that the Second World War was the single most significant event of the 20th century. It reshaped the world. As a consequence of this titanic struggle, the great European colonial empires disintegrated, leaving in their wake dozens of new nations. The United Nations was formed, as was the World Court. The principle of war crimes was established, that there were norms of human conduct that could not be transgressed, even in war, and that guilty parties would be tracked down and held accountable. The State of Israel emerged, ushering in an era of conflict in the Middle East that continues till today. The Korean Peninsula was partitioned, and it too remains an area of great tension. The Second World War had a huge impact on the field of science. Among the many things that emerged from it were jet aircraft, blood plasma, sulfa antibiotics, advanced rocketry, computers, radar, sonar, helicopters, and of course, atomic energy. New military strategies were developed, with the aircraft carrier becoming the dominant naval force. The development of amphibious landing craft changed theories of coastal defense. The assault rifle was a development of World War II, as was the concept of airborne assault using large formations of parachute troops. The concept of an enemy's civilian population being considered a legitimate target of war emerged. As the threat of war grew, Congress passed the Selective Training and Service Act on September 14, 1940. This was our nation's first peacetime draft. Men 21 through 35 were required to register for service. If selected, they served 1 year. After Pearl Harbor, this law was changed to include all men from 18 through 45 with a term of service of the duration of the war, plus 6 months. The war added new terms to popular vocabulary, like genocide, blitzkrieg, firestorm, GI, quisling, final solution, and concentration camp. Franklin Roosevelt was elected to a third and fourth term because of the war, prompting the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution. The Civil Rights Movement was given tremendous impetus by the contributions of black soldiers and sailors. It became increasingly difficult to justify racial segregation and state-sanctioned racism while fighting a global war for liberty. In August of 1942, the United States and Mexico began the Bracero program, which brought Mexican farm workers to the United States as guests to do critically needed work, agricultural work, and to alleviate a serious manpower shortage. On February 19, 1942, Franklin Roosevelt signed the Executive Order 9066. This allowed the removal of all Japanese American citizens from the West Coast to be interned without charge. 110,000 American citizens were jailed without any crime, any criminal procedures whatsoever. Strange that in Hawaii, which had actually been attacked, only 1,800 out of 150,000 Japanese American citizens were interned. I think it's safe to say that if that were to happen today, it would be termed ethnic cleansing and be a war crime. Domestically, the Second World War ended the Great Depression in the United States. Before the war, America had been one of a handful of major world powers. After the war, she was a global superpower, rivaled only by the USSR. The impact on America's industrial base was enormous. The gross national product grew at an unbelievable 21% a year. By 1945, America accounted for over 54% of the world's industrial production. One example of this growth would be the Willow Run B-24 production plant in Michigan. Started in the spring of 1942, it became, in less than 14 months, a colossus of industry. It sprawled over 64 acres. It housed the largest factory building in world history, 3.5 million square feet, with a production line of over a mile. It was able to produce one giant 4-engine B-24 bomber an hour, 650 per month. In 1944, close to 8,000 B-24s rolled off its assembly lines. Impressive as that number is, it represented less than 10% of warplane production that year. This was just one of tens of thousands of war industry sites. Here in the Portland area, the Kaiser shipyards worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, building Liberty ships, one of which is pictured here.